Welcome to the program. I'm your host, Neil Howard, here on Health Professional Radio. Real glad that you could join us. Going to be speaking with Garrett Bain, president of EcoGen BioSciences in Grand Junction, Colorado. He's joining us on the program to talk about the increased demand for CBD therapeutics. He's also going to talk a little bit about the difference between hemp and cannabis, the associated therapeutics, and a little bit about the withdrawal of the FDA's proposal to regulate the over-the-counter sales of CBD and what that means to the industry overall. A lot to cover in just a few minutes. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Mr. Garrett Bain.
Thanks, Neil. I'm happy to be here.
Give us a little bit of your background and talk about your mission there at EcoGen.
Absolutely. So I started in consumer packaged good distribution and entered the hemp-derived CBD space in 2017, kind of at the beginning of the regulatory environment that allowed for hemp-derived CBD products. After the 2018 Farm Bill, we really kind of found a new industry where farmers were getting involved, growing the crop, really understanding how to monetize it. So I was with a industry pioneer for the early part of my career in the space. I then moved to Kadenwood BioSciences, who was really looking to build a vertical integration, and through that process, we acquired EcoGen. EcoGen was a leading hemp-derived CBD grower and producer in the space, and we acquired EcoGen in August of 2020, and I relocated to Colorado to run our operations here and oversee our agricultural processing and marketing efforts.
So just how big are the cannabis and the hemp industries? I'm pretty big, I'm sure, but how big?
There's a lot of debate about that. I think you'll hear estimates ranging from a $2 billion industry to $20 billion by 2025. I think that the truth probably lies somewhere in between. It's a kind of a wide net that's cast, obviously cannabis being on the marijuana or the medical marijuana side of the business. You'll have different estimates, especially with the global markets. But the hemp industry is essentially broken into two different industries. One is the fiber and the seed side of the business, or the industrial hemp side of the business. And then there's the hemp-derived CBD products, which are more about the health and wellness and the cannabinoids. And that industry alone is expected, to grow pretty significantly over the next 3 to 5 years. A lot of that depends on the regulatory environment. So, estimates as high as 20 billion are pretty optimistic. Given the fact that we still do not have regulatory clarity from the FDA as to how to regulate these products, as whether it's a dietary supplement or if is it a food product.
With that being said, with the disparities in estimates, what's the difference between hemp and cannabis? Is it that big a difference for the disparities in growth to be that wide-ranging? So
the difference between hemp and marijuana or cannabis, if you will, and hemp and marijuana are both cannabis plants. Hemp is absent the THC that makes marijuana psychoactive, right? Marijuana is a psychoactive compound. Hemp lacks the THC molecule and in a meaningful amount. They draw the line. The federal regulators draw the line at 0.3% THC in that mass. So it's somewhat of an arbitrary line to be drawn. But the real simple and short answer is hemp is non-psychoactive, and its other constituent molecules are non-psychoactive, while marijuana, has a psychoactive effect that gets you high.
Now, I was under the impression that there were already some state regulations in place for the industry. You say that there's not clear communication from the government. Are we talking about government level, state level, or both?
So there is a framework for the agricultural side of the business, right? Every state under the Farm Bill has a program is able to grow this as an agricultural crop, and it's recognized as a legal agricultural crop within the framework of the guidelines of the Farm Bill, right? You have to maintain THC levels below 0.3%, so you're using genetics that will yield that product. So there are guidelines, but most of it is around how to grow it, how to handle it, and how to process it. What isn't clear is how it is regulated federally, as an ingredient, right? And that's really falls back on the FDA. And the FDA has not weighed in on whether or not this is going to be regulated as a dietary supplement or as a food product or both, depending on the concentrations or the preparations or formulations. So I think that really the market is somewhat stunted because a lot of the larger players, a lot of the big box retailers, Amazon, really haven't gotten into the market because they're waiting for clarity from the FDA.
So basically this stunting of the market is because I guess our regulatory agencies aren't seeing, I guess, the benefits or even the many different therapeutic areas that are currently available. Is that something that you see? And do you see this stunted market expanding once clarity is provided?
Yes, and I think that's a key item. They do realize that they are different products. What the FDA is, as I understand it, is what they're looking for is more data on the safety of these molecules and of these formulations and products. So there's been a lot of submissions from folks all across the industry trying to load the FDA up with data that they can use to help make better decisions on how they're going to regulate these products. And we're very hopeful that they'll come to a conclusion that allows for these products to be, marketed and sold and consumed in the U.S. Like any other dietary supplement or food product. So when that in fact happens, you'll see a market increase in the volume of product being commercialized here in the United States and globally. I think a lot of the global markets are looking to the FDA to weigh in on this topic before they move themselves. So I think the reason why it's really tough to project what the market size will be is because if it's not a food product and it's only a dietary supplement, then the market size is much smaller. Whereas if it is a food at some level, a dietary supplement like vitamin C, you'll find in a food, in potential dietary supplement products and in drugs, potentially. So if it does, cross all of those categories, the global market size is massive.
And I'm assuming that hemp and cannabis can't be interchanged as far as the use or the designation above and beyond the psychoactive properties. And if you take the psychoactive properties out of the mix, can both of them be used interchangeably? Potentially. The molecules exist in different ratios in marijuana versus hemp. Hemp is rich in most of the genetics that we're working with here in the United States. The hemp is rich in CBD, right, in cannabidiol. Whereas the genetics on the marijuana side of things are the opposite. They're very rich in THC and have very low CBD. So the genetics are really what are the determining factors that that separate these two markets. Now, I think there's places where CBD and marijuana will converge. And we're already starting to see that in some of the markets, in the recreational and the medical marijuana markets, where some of the marijuana companies are actually leveraging CBD from hemp to combine that back into formulations with THC to create 1-to-1 ratios of CBD and THC or some other combination of ratios. So I think there will be somewhat of a convergence, but EcoGen, our focus is strictly on hemp-derived cannabinoid products and we don't play in the marijuana space. Where can listeners go online and get some more information about EcoGen and what you're doing in this emerging space?
Yeah, great. They can find us at www.EcoGenBioSciences.com.
Great. Garrett, thank you so much for joining us on Health Professional Radio.
It's my pleasure. Thank you, Neil.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Garrett Bain, president of EcoGen BioSciences in Grand Junction, Colorado. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, SoundCloud, and be sure and subscribe to the YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.